Now, Republican strategist Whitley Yates, also with us, Democratic strategist Morgan Harper, federal litigator and former political candidate. To you both, good morning. Thanks for being here. Whitley, let me start with you. The debate, right? Does this happen?
The problem that we have, right, is that former President Trump has already debated one of the presumptive nominees in which he face planted, and they had to reverse and switch him out. Now that we actually have a nominee who wasn't necessarily elected at the ballot box, but was selected by the delegates, now that we have Kamala Harris as the nominee, she wants to change the rules. She wants to be sitting. She wants the mics to be on. And he had already agreed to what the ramifications of the debate were going to be. And I think that the Harris campaign basically backtracking and attempting to change some of these things is indicative of where they are when it comes to debate prep.
Morgan, your thoughts on the debate and whether it happens in these parameters?
Yeah, I mean, we have a new candidate, we have a new campaign strategy, and they have different preferences. I think that's pretty normal here. And look, I think it's smart what they're asking for. The mics getting muted, I don't know that that served President Biden that well in the last debate. I think Vice President Harris here has an opportunity to really demonstrate her authority, her experience, and the critical need to check a lot of false information that is undoubtedly going to come from former President Trump. And so having that muting, being restricted in how you're doing that, I don't think will play to all of her strengths. She's a former prosecutor. She knows how to drive a conversation and ask questions that really corner her opponent. And we saw in the convention this past week, I was there live in Chicago, saw it firsthand, just how much she is gaining steam and really emoting those presidential vibes and energy over these last few days, and only more of that to come, I would imagine.
I think the question remains, is the honeymoon continuing? What's to attribute some of the momentum? Whitley, this new poll from Decision Desk HQ shows Kamala Harris riding that wave ahead in a lot of these polls. How problematic is that for the former president?
I think it should actually be expected. So what we've had after the reverse and the switching out of the candidates has been what we've deemed Kamala mania, right? Where people who were disenfranchised or didn't really like the Democratic nominee before with President Biden are excited about her being there. And then we just had a whole week of what I would call the presidential pep rally in Chicago with the DNC. I'm actually surprised that we're not seeing her gaining stronger in the polls right now following the convention. However, will she be able to maintain this level of excitement and momentum for the next 70 days? I highly doubt it, especially when you see her losing ground in places like Georgia, specifically with white male voters. I think she needs to go ahead and whip up that coalition of white dudes for Kamala because they're seeming to slip within that group of people.
Morgan, what does the ground game look like in some of these swing states for the Harris campaign to try to gain on that momentum? What are the challenges between now and November?
I think the main challenge is just covering as much ground as possible. I mean, these swing states are in disparate parts of the country, so they do have to be out there. I mean, I agree with Whitley on that there's a need to really engage with all of the key constituencies here and run up the numbers in these critical places. But I do think that the Harris-Walz ticket is up to the challenge. As we saw in the convention, this was the first time that Governor Walz had given this type of speech on the national stage, and he knocked it out of the park. People being exposed to his family, just how real they are. I'm in the Midwest, I'm in Ohio, and I've talked to a lot of people that say, he's like us. We like know that guy. He lives down the street. And so there's a lot of opportunity here for them to pick up support along the way. And they just have to show up everywhere as many times as they can between now and November.
We're seeing a lot of the base solidifying, right? That's expected in the final stretch of a campaign. But Whitley, when it comes to Donald Trump, how much does the RFK endorsement help? And how has he successfully reach out to independent voters?
The RFK endorsement was an unlikely ally, is what I like to call that. But it does help because when you looked at RFK's polling, whether he was between 2% and 1%, those people ideally supporting Trump is going to be a good thing, and it's going to be a push. Trump has decided that he's going to focus on the kitchen table topics and the issues, the border, the economy, inflation, and how people are doing when it comes to where America's standing within the geopolitical spectrum and where we are within some of these wars, kitchen table topics, while the Harris campaign right now is really focusing on a lot of these social issues, abortion and reproductive rights. when we haven't necessarily seen a lot of policies come from the Harris-Walz campaign, it's definitely a campaign on feels and vibes. I think the American people are going to identify with what's happening in their pockets as opposed to what they're just feeling in their hearts.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.